So after the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine, there's some interesting 49ers draft buzz that I want to get to on today's San Francisco 49ers report. What I think the Niners might do in the 2024 NFL Draft, and a look at some of the prospects that they met with and the story that tells. Stay tuned for that. But first, today's 49ers report is sponsored by Manscaped. Do you want the best men's grooming products out there? Do you want to join the 10 million men worldwide who have put their trust in Manscaped? I bet you do, because nobody wants a hairy George W. Bush down below the belt. Get 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped.com/49ers. Promo code 49ers20 for that deal to apply. And we'll tell you more about what they have to offer coming up here in just a few moments. So I want to start off with the most notable takeaway from the NFL Scouting Combine. This is a great opportunity for me to talk with people across the National Football League. Broke a couple of stories while we were in Indianapolis, and I just have some takeaways for where I think things might be trending on the Niners front going into the draft. Of course, free agency does begin a week from today on Monday, and a lot of things can change throughout the free agency period. But the biggest takeaway from the Combine is that the Niners seem to be hearing the chatter from myself and all of you that they need to address the offensive line. This is the biggest weakness on this football club. It's what's held them back the last two postseasons, in my opinion, because the offensive line has been exposed. NFC Championship game against Philadelphia, Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Niners met with a lot of high-end offensive tackles and some interior offensive linemen at the Combine this past week. Some formal interviews, some Senior Bowl interviews, and overall interest. Javon out of Mizzou, that was a formal interview. He plays offensive tackle. Niners met with offensive lineman Christian Jones out of Texas at the Senior Bowl. Taliese, Fuaga, Oregon State. He's got a nasty streak to him. More on him in a moment, but an offensive tackle who, with the Beavers, just played great football. He has met with all 32 teams in the NFL, from the Senior Bowl to the Scouting Combine. Niners might have to move up to take him. Barton is a player who I love. He's cerebral, really smart, played left tackle last year with Duke, but has experience playing center. I think that he can play guard. Arms are a little bit short. That's why he might pop into the interior, but the Niners had a formal interview with him. Another intriguing player is Kingsley Suamataia. BYU had a formal interview with him. He's a really athletic offensive tackle who starred for BYU. Jordan Morgan out of Arizona had a formal interview with San Francisco. He can play tackle. He can play guard. Amarius Mims is a fascinating player. Only 8 collegiate starts at Georgia, but he's a freak. 6'7", 340 pounds. He has all the makings of being a Pro Bowl tackle in this league. He had a formal interview with the Niners. So too did J.C. Latham out of Alabama, and offensive tackle out of Houston in Patrick Paul. It's funny when you look at this draft class and how it coincides with what the Niners need, because this is a perfect situation for the Niners. It's a great year for San Francisco to need offensive line help. Draft evaluators, scouts, everybody I talked to, they're calling this draft class at offensive line historic. You might have to move up to get the player that you really covet. If you stand pat at number 31, you can still get a quality guy. In round 2, round 3, there might be some really talented offensive tackles, guards, and centers that you could draft to fortify your offensive line for now and in the future. The good thing with offensive line, there's not a huge developmental curve that needs to take place. These can be plug-and-play starters from the jump, outside of maybe an Amarius Mims, who doesn't have a lot of experience, or Tyler Guyton, who only started 10 games last year with Oklahoma. I wouldn't rule out, though, the possibility of the Niners trading up for an offensive lineman. Taliese Fuaga out of Oregon State might go in the teens. But the good thing for San Francisco is, at their disposal is a bunch of third-round compensatory picks. You pair that with number 31, can you convince a team, or you trade away your second-round pick to get a player who you think might be your future Trent Williams replacement, and in the meantime, your right tackle? RAS score. It's a relative athletic score where these athletes are basically rated on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as their athletic testing numbers go. Fuaga moved like a gazelle at the scouting combine and all of the drills. He's 6'6", 324 pounds. Anytime you see green here, that's elite. So he rated 944 on the relative athletic score. His vertical leap, really good. Broad jump, very good. And at 324 pounds, he ran a 5'2", 40-yard dash. Really good. And the arm length, pretty good too. As far as Kingsley Suamataia, he checks in at 6'4", 326 pounds. Overall RAS score of 935. He nearly broke a 5-second 40-yard dash at 326 pounds. That's stupid. He might be available in the 20s, maybe at 31. Obviously, a lot can change in the pre-draft process. And then there's Amarius Mims, who, when you look at his size, 6'7", 340, and he nearly broke a 5-second 40-yard dash before he pulled his hamstring. Those are just great numbers. Now, his vertical leaping ability isn't great. Sometimes that can gauge explosiveness, but the guy's 6'7", 340. You don't need to throw down a windmill dunk. RAS score at 953. Patrick Paul is another player who might more realistically be available at number 31, maybe in round 2, but probably not where the Niners draft in the 60s. But he's 6'7", 330. He ran a 5'14", 40-yard dash. Those are important numbers because in Kyle Shanahan's outside zone scheme, he asks his offensive linemen to get out in space. So some of these players might require a trade-up. Some of them might be available in the 20s, which would require a trade-up, or they might fall to number 31 overall. If the Niners go offensive lineman at 31, which is what I think they might do with the early read here, defensive line cannot be ruled out either, because they could go defensive line at 31 as well because they like to build their team along the trenches. I think wide receiver could seriously be in play in round 2 at pick number 63. This is also a very deep wide receiver class, and we're going to talk wideouts here coming up in just a moment. But first, I want you to get into the shoes of John Lynch, general manager for the Niners. What position do the Niners need to target in the first round? I want you to be honest with me down below in the comment section. I think it's offensive line for sure. Today's 49ers Report, as I mentioned off the rip, is sponsored by Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped.com/49ers. Top of the morning to you, or top of the evening to you, wherever you're watching from, because we have people tuned in worldwide. This episode of the 49ers Report brought to you by the St. Patrick's Day Shamrock Shavers Manscaped. This year, don't just chase rainbows. Make your own pot of gold and groom your little leprechaun with the leaders and below the kilt care, or your big leprechaun. Say goodbye to your clover forest with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and let your confidence shine bright. Embrace the luck of the Irish and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. Head over to manscaped.com/49ers and use the code 49ers20 for 20% off and free shipping. Ever since I've used Manscaped, I can proudly say I found my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Meet your new lucky charm for St. Patrick's Day because the new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra comes with 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, one for a classic trim and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. Equipped with dual LED spotlights, navigate your shamrock patch in peace, just like these offensive linemen were navigating throughout their combine drills at Lucas Oil Stadium. Its compact case makes it an ideal companion, ready for any adventure or last-minute plans. So one more time, use the code 49ers20. You get 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped.com/49ers. Link is dangling down below in the comment section as well as in the description of this video. Now to the wide receiver position. The wide receiver position for all teams in the NFL going into this draft is fascinating. It's extremely deep. It's extremely talented. And with these wide receivers, you probably saw this if you watched the drills, there are all different types of prototypes. The one theme, though, these wide receivers can fly. And we might be coming to a conversation where why pay wide receivers big money if the draft is just loaded with really good ones every year, where you have these wide receivers under team control for 4 or 5 years at a fraction of the price of what Justin Jefferson might ask for, $30 to $35 million. Notable formal meetings for the Niners in Indianapolis. And keep in mind, Niners aren't going to draft all of these players. They're not interested in all of these players. They're simply doing their due diligence on all of these prospects. Also, down the road, you never know in free agency when you might be able to scoop one of them up after the rookie contract expires. But formal meetings here of note for me, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, Troy Franklin, all of those players might go in the first round and might go early in the first round, where the Niners might have to trade up. Xavier Legette out of South Carolina, 220, Deebo Samuel-like player. He could be available in round 2. And then Brendan Rice, probably a middle-round draft pick at this point, the son of Niners legend and the GOAT in Jerry Rice. Luke McCaffrey, with how he performed in the gauntlet, in the 40-yard dash, he could be a realistic target. Now, we highlighted him, we profiled him over the weekend on the 49ers Report, and I'm not just saying this because he's the brother of Christian McCaffrey. But if the Niners were to let Jauan Jennings go because another team gives him the bag, the RFA tender is also pretty expensive, Luke McCaffrey out of the slot is an option. And he'd be a good option and a good fit in this offense. He ran a 4.46 40-yard dash. That was faster than his brother Christian McCaffrey. And we've seen that Christian McCaffrey has that pull-away speed. I'm fascinated as well to see what the Niners' plans are at wide receiver. Do they pay and extend Brandon Ayuk? If that's the case, do you bring back Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Jauan Jennings all this year, and then next year you address the future of Deebo Samuel? Do you let go of Jauan Jennings and you draft a wide receiver to take his spot out of the slot? That could be option 2 because they could be a little bit cheaper than Jauan Jennings. The Niners are checking in on wideouts for a reason, because they know the price of doing business is lofty with Deebo. They could find out that's the case with Ayuk and Jauan Jennings, and they have to have another plan B. As for the tight end position, I don't think you can rule out tight end for the Niners. San Francisco may prioritize a legitimate backup option behind George Kittle, and then that same wide receiver could be groomed to eventually take over for George Kittle. Couple of wideouts that the Niners met with at the scouting combine, and they've checked in on Jatavion Sanders out of Texas a lot from the Senior Bowl up until the NFL scouting combine. He earned an RAS grade of 8.06. That is not great. His height, it's average at 6'3", 245 pounds. The 40-yard dash, not bad at that size of under 4.7, so he moves pretty quick. The 20-yard split, okay. That short area quickness 10-yard split is elite, and the shuttle, just okay. But he's a player who, in the last 2 years, has had more than 45 catches for Texas, and Kyle Shanahan played wide receiver at Texas, and he goes down there a lot, as Xavier Worthy told us, because he's also really good friends with Steve Sarkisian. A wide receiver who I really like and might go in the top 100 now is Jared Wiley out of TCU. Because Jatavion Sanders showed out in Austin, Texas, Jared Wiley transferred from Texas to TCU, and his athletic testing numbers were awesome. He's a very smooth mover, 6'6", 249 pounds. He ran a 40-yard dash at 4.62, and at that size, that's really special. This is a pass-catching option who could be a legit receiving threat for the Niners. And then this is also a great draft for nickel corners. And John Lynch even said, you can never have enough nickel corners. And we saw that became a problem in the Super Bowl for San Francisco when Logan Ryan was getting snaps. John Lynch also did say they are high on some of the young players on this roster, and we'll certainly see. But can they afford to pass up on a player like Mike Sanders still out of Michigan, who could be a great round 3 or a day 3 pick? And then Max Melton out of Rutgers is one of my draft crushes. Sanders still started his career collegiately at Michigan as a wide receiver. And I always love wide receiver corner hybrids because your ability to turn around, adjust to the football, and make plays on the football, having ball skills and instincts is important. Now, Sanders still is probably best as a nickel slot corner because, as you can see here, the height, 5'9", 182, it's not great, but that's perfect for the slot. 40-yard dash, he was a 4.47 guy. The vertical and broad was awesome. And he consistently made big plays under Jim Harbaugh in big moments. He nearly had a pick six in the national championship against Michael Penix in Washington. I'm really high on this prospect. Max Melton is a player who was highly coveted by Rutgers, and I think is going to be highly coveted by a lot of teams in the NFL. He primarily played outside corner, but he's fast, he's physical, 5'11", 187. That's why I think he could start right away in the slot. 40-yard dash, 4.39. Anytime you're a sub 4.4 guy, and that was a lot better than what a lot of people anticipated, that's excellent. And when you have the history of playing on the outside, that allows you to play in the slot. And what's cool about Max Melton, not only the fact that he said that all throughout this offseason he's met with the Niners 5 to 6 times, he grew up a diehard Niner fan and said that that doesn't just go back to the recent days of some of these Niners defenses. He even threw out a Ronnie Lott reference when I asked him about it. So what more do you want to know about the Niners draft? I think we gave you some great intel there. Again, I'm not ruling out defensive line at 31. Wouldn't surprise me at all, but some of the chatter that I've been hearing, the information I've been able to gather from a week in Indianapolis. Appreciate everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we're going live tomorrow on the 49ers Report, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. We'll catch you then.